Good afternoon, my loved ones. Allison Joan Hall Thomas here, your pastor, the airway spiritual entertainer, author of the book Cracks in the Potter's Clay, How I Overcame Bipolar 1 with Faith. And I'm here with Doris's daily devotional, and I think I'm going to read a chapter of my book. I think I'm just flowing with the Holy Spirit right now. I don't really know what I'm doing right now, but I'm listening for him and he directs me. Okay. Exodus chapter 7, verse 12. Each one threw down his staff, and it became a snake. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Footnote: God performed a miracle by turning Aaron's staff into a snake, and Pharaoh's magicians did the same through trickery or sorcery. Although miracles can help us believe, it is dangerous to rely on them alone. Satan can imitate some parts of God's work and lead people astray. Pharaoh focused on the miracle rather than the message. We can avoid this error by letting the Word of God be the basis of our faith. No miracle from God would endorse any message that is contrary to the teachings of His Word. And also from Doris, good morning. To God be the glory for another brand new day. If the magicians had been as powerful as God, they would have reversed the plagues, not added to them. Lots of love to you all. And I'm going to read part of my book. The other day I read the dedication and the forward and the introduction. Now I'm going to read chapter 1. At least I think I am. Cracks in the Potter's Clay, How I Overcame Bipolar 1 with Faith. Chapter 1, The Surface. I had heard about God by attending church with my grandmother as a child. My maternal grandparents were Jewish, known as Hebrew Israelites. They worshiped on Saturdays, still do, and it was an all-day event. Lunchtime was the best part of the day for me. The Church of God and Saints of Christ had the best cooks in the world. I believe they still do. I even remember traveling to Belleville, Virginia for one Passover, and the food was delicious there too. I heard the word of God, but I did not really understand the concept. My first experience with God happened when I was 6 or 7 years old. Even though my mother sent us to church with my grandmother as a child, she did not go to church regularly herself back then. I do, however, recall her taking us to church on a few Easter Sundays. I remember getting new outfits with hats and posing for pictures. This Easter Sunday, we went to a church on Liberty Heights Avenue, not far from our house. They had an Easter egg hunt. I remember the church building being made of big black stones. I remember walking towards the back of the church where no other children were looking for eggs. I remember kneeling down on the grass to pick up a pink-colored egg, and I noticed how green the grass looked. Then I looked around at the flowers before me. My eyes then looked up at the blue sky with the white puffy clouds. I had a feeling that I had never felt before. It was calm and it was warm. And I remember saying out loud, "Oh, you're God." I felt His presence in nature. He was always with me. I was a very petite child and small for my age until I reached middle school. I used to love to climb into small places and hide. One summer day in Ocean Pines, Maryland, where we had a summer home, my sister Adrienne came up with the great idea to play magic act with a footlocker. She played the role of the magician and I was the assistant. She proceeded to lock me in the chest. She had a sense of humor, so she jokingly told me that she could not get the lock open. When I started to panic, she relieved me that she was only joking. Well, I was waiting for her to open the locker to let me out, and it was not happening. I was locked inside. I had to persuade Adrian to go and get my mother for help because she did not want to upset my mother that she had locked me in the chest. Our mother was extremely dramatic. I remember hearing from inside the chest. I remember hearing Adrian talking to her in the room. I heard just what I expected to hear my mother yell at the top of her lungs. What? Then I recall Adrian sticking a knife in the sides of the trunk trying to get it open, and at the same time, my mother trying to get the key to work. I believe that I was about 7 years old. It was getting hard to breathe inside. It was hot and I was sweating. I was cramped up and uncomfortable. Suddenly, I remembered a conversation that I heard between our realtor, my mother, and stepfather. It was about having to wait for an ambulance to come from Salisbury, Maryland to Ocean Pines, Maryland in case of an emergency. Salisbury was 22 miles away. My mother had not even called the ambulance yet. I remember the thought coming into my head that I would be dead in 22 minutes. The idea just popped into my head to get on my hands and knees and push my back up like a cat with all my might until I busted the top of the chest and squeezed my little body out of the side. I still remember the shock on both Adrian's and my mother's face to see me bursting through the chest. I now realize that it was God who told me when and what to do to save my life. My mother raised my sister and I with freedom to explore and express ourselves. My mother's sister, Ruth, told me that my mother was reading a book on child rearing and read that it was not good to spank your children. I believe this was a mistake. My sister was very disrespectful to my mother. I believe if my mother would have spanked her more, she would have not been so disrespectful. I received one spanking from my mother, and that was when I was around 6. Here is the reason why. My mother was on a porch talking to a woman, and Adrian and I were behind the front door making a lot of noise. Adrian would tap on this glass to make them look at us and then stoop down out of sight. I was just laughing and peeking out of the window. This went on for the entire conversation. I know it was embarrassing for my mother. Well, the woman left, and my mother turned around and looked at us looking out the front door with an expression of anger that scared me. As she reached for the door, I heard her say that she was going to spank us. I knew by the look in her eyes that she meant it. I saw Adrian get spanked before, and I didn't want any parts of it. So I ran and hid in my favorite hiding spot. It was a wooden dresser in my closet that was missing the bottom drawer. I was so tiny that I could fit my entire body inside of it. I heard Adrian getting spanked and crying. Then there was silence. I heard my mother call me, but I did not answer. I heard Adrian telling my mother that she knows where I always would hide. I heard my mother outside the closet. She called my name. Allison, are you in there? I remember answering, yes. She told me to come out. I asked her if I was going to get a spanking, and she told me no. She lied. I came out, and she sat on my bed and pulled me across her lap and spanked me. While the spanking hurt, I remember crying and thinking, she lied to me. That hurt me more. I had such a loving relationship with her, and she always told me that I was her joy. You do not spank your joy. I do realize now that I should have come out when she called me. I only obeyed her because she said she wouldn't spank me. That was the only time that she ever hit me. I continued to grow up hearing my sister disrespect my mother and my mother not disciplining her consistently. I know there were times that I needed discipline also. My mother and father divorced when I was young. I believe I was 3 or 4 years old. Adrian, however, she was 2 years older than me. She remembered my father better than I and had memories of him. She felt his absence. I only have one memory of my father and my mother in the house, and that is an embarrassing memory. I had watched something on TV about stunt people. I was fascinated by Evel Knievel. I saw someone control their body while falling down a flight of stairs. I remember practicing falling down the stairs slowly. Well, I remember calling my mother and father to come to the bottom of the steps to watch me. I was at the top of the stairs. I said, "Watch this." I proceeded my slow, controlled descent, and something went wrong immediately. I tumbled all the way down the stairs, full speed, landing at my parents' feet. How proud they must have been. The only other memory I have of my father, Ahmed, then Arnold, in the house was in the hallway by the front door. I was 13, and I remember meeting my sister Amina, then her name was April, and my new stepmother, Khadijah, then her name was Kathy. My father, stepmother, and sister were standing together. I remember how cute my little sister was. She was so shy and had the sweetest smile I had ever seen. My father had moved to Minneapolis shortly after my parents' divorce and only saw him a few times growing up. My mom remarried Joseph Corsi when I was maybe 5 or 6, and they separated a couple times during their marriage, the last time when I was 13. They remained separated and married until his death during my first semester of college. I remember him being very encouraging to me and very mean whenever he drank too much. He was an alcoholic. When Pop, as we called him, was sober, he was a man of integrity. He would always say that nothing was too good for his tomatoes. Adrian and I were his tomatoes. He referred to Mommy as prime rib. After they separated, I would catch a Greyhound bus to Atlantic City to visit him. Once I asked him why he did not find someone else, and this is what he told me. "Allison, once you've had prime rib, you don't want ground beef anymore." He was a cook, but would not allow me in the kitchen while he was cooking. The years that he was with us were made up of good times, laughter, yelling, and cursing. I was afraid of him when he was drunk, so I did everything he told me to do without hesitation. Adrian resented him from the very beginning. I think because she remembered our father and did not like a man that was not her father telling her what to do. She would resist his efforts to discipline. An example of Pop's alcoholic abuse behavior was one night during our first summers in Ocean Pines. Adrian was talking back to him. He became furious and grabbed her around her throat. Well, my mom did not play that. She punched Pop across the face, causing his black eyeglasses to go sailing across the room. He was legally blind. I remember him saying, "You done it now, Joan. You never knock a blind man's glasses off his face." He stormed back into the bedroom and got his gun. He kept his loaded gun on his nightstand and told Adrian and I never to touch it. We never did. My mother said she was so relieved when someone broke into our house and stole that gun. He stopped in the kitchen and got a large 2-pronged carving fork and set the gun on the end table next to my mother. She was seated in a chair. I was kneeling on the floor next to her crying and looking out the sliding glass door into the darkness. Adrian was next to me. It was pitch black outside, except for the lights of Ocean City across the bay. He then went and sat across the room at the dining room table, grasping the fork in his hand. He told my mother to pick up the gun and try to shoot him, and threatened her that if she did try, he would run across the room and pierce her heart with the fork before she could even pick up the gun. Being so young and imagining my sweet mother being stabbed with a fork, made me start crying harder, and I started begging her not to try it. She calmly said, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's not going to do that." Then all our attention was drawn to headlights of a car moving very slowly in front of our house. It was a police car. Evidently, someone heard the yelling and crying and called the police. Pop was only in Ocean Pines during the summer on the weekends. My mother would drive to Ocean City Friday evenings and pick him up at the Trailways bus station. We would drop him off on Sunday evenings to return to Baltimore. I loved that my mother was a teacher because I had her on the weekends, holidays, and summers. During the school year, my mother began to remove herself and my sister and I from Pop's alcoholic abusive behavior by taking us to the Arena Playhouse with her. The Arena Playhouse is an historic African American theater in Baltimore, Maryland. The early rehearsals for plays were not in the existing theater, but at the Community College of Baltimore, also known as CCB. It is now Baltimore City Community College, aka BCCC. Rehearsals were also held at a 3-story row home on McCullough Street. I recall a rather scary event that also happened when I was 7. My mother and the other actors tended to stand outside the building after rehearsals and talk to each other. McCullough Street was not in the best of neighborhoods, as we were about to find out. My sister remembers this story so well. She saw a man walking up the street and she remembered feeling afraid. She said she told our mother to hurry up and to get in the car. My mother didn't listen. Unfortunately, when the man Adrian saw walking towards us reached us, he grabbed Adrian, 9 years old, around the throat and said, "I have a gun in this bag and I will kill this young bitch if y'all don't give me all your money." My mother simultaneously yelled, "Get your hands off my daughter," while delivering a Bruce Lee chop to the man's arm, knocking the bag with the gun in it he was holding to the ground. My mother's actions took the man by surprise and he took off running. Tony Carpenter, who was playing the role of Jesus in a play at the time, took off running after him. I remember being so afraid that I just started crying. My mother was so shaken up that she could not open the car door. She kept turning the key back and forth, locking and unlocking the door. Tony ended up catching the man and he was arrested. Adrian had to go to court to identify him. She was very traumatized. She still remembers his name. So do I. I recall the next rehearsals being at the theater. From age 7 to around age 15, my mother either acted in or directed every play of every season at the Playhouse. My sister and I brought the term theater brats to life. We knew every inch of that theater. Adrian was always the ringleader and would have me upstairs in the attic trying on costumes or running around the building top speed while our mother was rehearsing. Sometimes child actors were needed. Mommy would make us play the roles. When I was not exploring with Adrian, I was watching my mother act. She was exceptionally talented. I especially enjoyed watching her act in musicals. I loved how she moved. She had such rhythm and could make a simple movement look grand. My mentor, Les Brown, always says that some things are taught and some things are caught. I caught a lot watching my mother perform. Being so heavily involved in the theater was great for my memory. I remember cueing my mother, which was holding the playbook and reading the other characters' roles while my mother said her lines. I would tell her if she got any words wrong or if she missed any words. No wonder I found it easy to learn Spanish. I already knew how to memorize. The Arena Playhouse was put on a wonderful variety of comedies, musicals, and dramas. We knew all the regular actors there. We even went to the cast parties. They were held after the last performance of a show. Everyone knew Joan's daughters. If you saw Joan, you saw her daughters. I was always so proud to be her daughter. And every play I saw my mother act in, no matter how big or small the part, she always got a standing ovation. My mother got a double master's degree in speech and theater from New York University. Two of her classmates were Esther Roll, Florida on TV show Good Times, and Louis Gossett Jr., fiddler from the movie Roots. She got both to come to the Arena Playhouse once. I remember Louis Gossett Jr. being genuinely nice. He was my mother's first boyfriend at age 22. She was super driven and focused while in high school and college. She told me that all their white classmates pushed them so hard to be a couple that it ruined the relationship. My mother was stunning, as you can see from the cover portrait. Louis Gossett Jr. was very handsome. My mother said her classmates insisted that they were perfect for each other. It did not seem natural, and the relationship did not prosper, but they remained friends. They kept in touch after graduation and her move back to Baltimore. My teenage years were characterized by lots of ups and downs. Bipolar 1 disorder is characterized by extreme highs and extreme lows. The extreme highs are referred to as states of mania or manic episodes. The extreme lows are characterized by depression and hopelessness. During mania, a bipolar one person is so physically active and awake for long periods of time and not aware that the body needs rest that eventually causes a crash. The crash is caused from physical and mental exhaustion, but the symptoms get attributed to depression. Therefore, I don't make important decisions when I'm exhausted, and I have learned not to even trust my feelings during this time because they were unusually inaccurate. When you are not well rested, your thoughts are not the same thoughts that you have when you are rested. When I was a teenager, I remember my mother saying, "Allison, you are either up or you're down. There's no in between with you." She did not even realize that she was diagnosing me, but I was just her daughter whom she loved. She did not take me to be evaluated. She accepted me for who I was and showed me unconditional love. I remember her making this statement, but I don't remember her attaching any emotion to it, be it negative or positive. I never thought twice about it until I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 at age 33 and was told about the symptoms. Pop and my mother separated when I was around 13 years old. My mother was saved by then and had asked God to sign for a sign to stay with him or not. Right after she prayed, he got drunk and embarrassed her at the Arena Playhouse by yelling and cursing. She asked him to leave the house and he left. She had purchased the house before they were married. I took it hard because I really loved him. He soon moved back to Atlantic City, New Jersey. I really missed him. He had been so encouraging to me. I became depressed. I began smoking cigarettes out of rebellion and stopped going to church with my mother so often. I would only go on Sundays. I began searching for love in older men who were more than willing to take advantage of a young, pretty girl with an athletic body. I mistakenly thought that if I slept with a man, he would love me and marry me. Not only was that not true, but my first 3 boyfriends, all considerably older than me, married the next woman after me. It was devastating for me. I remember thinking, what is wrong with me? Why don't men love me? I gave them my body. Another incident that reminds me of God's presence in my life is when I was a freshman at Hampton University. I bought a motorcycle because freshmen could not have cars on campus. I had gotten my driver's license as soon as I turned 16, and I was not about to go back to walking when I had been so accustomed to driving. I was spoiled at that time. One day, I was polishing my motorcycle on the side of Davidson Hall, which was a dormitory that I stayed in during my year at Hampton University. I felt homesick. I think that was the first bipolar 1 impulse that I gave into. Hampton was 4 hours away from Baltimore. I simply climbed on my bike and headed for Baltimore. I took Route 17 because it was very scenic. Unfortunately, it was very hilly also. My motorcycle was a small bike. It was a Honda C125S. It only went up to 80 miles per hour, and it used to stall when I trying to make it up steep hills. It would just cut off, and I would have to get to the side of the road to kick start it again and maybe replace a fuse. I was driving, and I noticed that I would soon be approaching a series of big hills. To make it over a hill, I used to drive fast so that I could coast forward if the bike stalled. I made it over the first hill. I made it over the second hill. The third hill was the steepest. I remember having a feeling of doom. Nonetheless, I maxed the MPH to 80. I made it to about 200 feet from the top of the hill, and my bike engine cut off. I was in the fast lane. My heart dropped in fear that the bike would decelerate quickly and I would get run over by a car behind me. Well, it turned out that when I looked in the rearview mirror, there were no cars behind me or beside me. I immediately thanked God and was able to coast over from the fast lane to the right shoulder. I began to walk and push the bike up the hill, and like a miracle, at the top of the hill was a gas station. I gassed up, which only took $1.75 to fill up the tank, replaced the fuse, and got back on the road. It was early wintertime, and I had only worn a jean jacket. The later it got in the evening, the lower the temperature dropped. I remember being at 2 hours from Baltimore when I first began to shiver. When I reached home, I went straight to my Aunt Ruth's house. She was my mother's sister, only sister. I figured my mother would still be at church. She was saved by then and was wearing many hats at the church, like pastor's aide, head of the TV, radio, and drama ministries. She was also working on her third master's degree, this one in divinity from St. Mary's Seminary in Baltimore, Maryland. I went inside my aunt's house, and I remember it took me a long time to stop shivering. Aunt Ruth had gone to bingo. I was sitting on the couch in the living room waiting for her. When my aunt arrived home, she came through the door announcing, "Somebody's got a motorcycle outside that looks just like Allison's." Then she saw me and screamed, "Oh my Lord!" No one could believe that I had driven that motorcycle 4 hours by myself. I was 18 years old. I did not understand why everyone thought that was so amazing. I just wanted to go home. I had transportation, and I never felt alone. I recall my mother bragging to others of my response when she asked me if I was afraid being alone on the road. My response was, I wasn't alone. God was with me. My mother developed great faith and was happy my faith was developing. James 4:8 says, "Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you." I believe that I was 17 when I walked the aisle to accept Jesus as my Savior at Bethel AME Church in Baltimore, Maryland, where my mother was the assistant pastor. The pastor at that time was Reverend John R. Bryant, now Bishop John R. Bryant. I remember that night when I drank the tiny communion cup. I felt a sensation like water rushing down my throat and into my lungs. I told my mother about it, and she told me that it was the Holy Spirit. I started to learn more about God by attending church regularly with my mother. I really enjoyed the singing of the Jones Brothers and the Imani Messengers Choir and all the hymns that they used to sing. Pop died during my first semester at Hampton University. I was majoring in architecture instead of art because Pop wanted me to. I got really depressed after he died. I stayed to myself and focused heavily on my architecture projects. One day, I was walking across campus to my dormitory when I saw a man playfully chasing a small boy around the yard. I don't know what it was about this man, but I stopped walking and just watched him from afar. My heart was fluttering. I then saw my dorm director, Pat White, and thought that the man was her boyfriend or husband. I snapped out of the daze I was in and continued to my dorm room, thinking no more of this man. One day, a friend of mine named Nicole came to Bemis, the architecture building, to find me. She said she had someone she wanted me to meet. I told that I wasn't interested in dating anyone. She said, "You don't have to marry the man, I just want you to meet him." She convinced me that I had been depressed long enough about my stepfather and that I should get away from schoolwork for a while. I agreed to go with her. She was dating this guy's friend named Jeff. Jeff was driving a black two-door Ford EXP. Nicole was sitting in the passenger seat of the two-seater. I crawled in the back of the car and looked out the back big rear window. We went to Langley Air Force Base to some barracks. Nicole and Jeff walked in front of me, and when we reached the guy's room, Jeff told me to knock on the door because he was expecting me. I knocked lightly on the door. I heard a voice say, "Come in." When I saw this man sitting on the bed, I had the same feeling I felt when I was walking across campus and saw that man. It felt so strong that I had to look away. When I looked away, I saw a vision of my mother and father with their wedding attire on. I thought to myself, is this going to be my husband? I told myself to be cool. We both fell in love hard and fast. We talked all night, and when I got back to my dorm room, I received a knock on the door that I had a phone call. I never got phone calls. My mother would write me letters and send me money, but I did not get calls. I was so happy to find out that this tall, dark, handsome man had called me and wanted to talk to me for 2 more hours. Douglas Lando Hall and I were married a little more than 3 months later. We had 2 children during our union, Joshua Lando Hall and Christina Joan Hall. They are 20 months apart. My sister and I are 23 months apart. I had Christina so Joshua would have someone to play with growing up. Douglas was an excellent provider. I tried to be an excellent housewife and loved taking care of him. I got pregnant right after we got married. My neighbor, Mrs. Smith, was a housewife, and I admired her being home with her children. I was thankful to be a housewife. I had breakfast on the table for Douglas before he left for work, lunch on the table when he arrived home for lunch, and dinner on the table when he got home from work. I kept the house neat and ironed his uniforms. I do remember being tired while I was pregnant and sleeping a lot. I remember waking up a couple of hours before he came home just to clean the house and cook before he got home. I had completed 1 full year at Hampton University before we got married. I loved Douglas because he was the first man that loved me enough to marry me, and then he was willing to give me children. The happiest day of my life was when I married Douglas. I remember sitting on the steps in the back of Bethel AME Church in my wedding gown with a huge smile on my face. The sun was shining through the church doors, and I was simply elated. My father even flew from Minneapolis to give me away. As we were walking down the aisle, I whispered to him, "Daddy, I'm scared." His response was, "Me too." Douglas left me in Baltimore with my mom for a few weeks after we were married and rented us a townhouse in West County Townhouses right around the corner from Hampton University. He then went back to Baltimore to take me to our new home. We loaded my bedroom furniture up in the U-Haul and left for Hampton. Correction, Douglas, Adrian, and my mother loaded the U-Haul. I had my regular horrific monthly cramps and I couldn't help. I would miss a day from school every month because I would vomit and have diarrhea and have horrible cramps the first day of my period. The doctors told me that they would most likely stop after I had my first child. They did. I can still see my mother and sister in the doorway holding each other crying as we pulled off. I was crying too. I was moving out of state. The three of us were close. When I was 8 months pregnant with Joshua, I met my best friend Jean. Douglas and her then husband Paul had been stationed together in Florida. Paul stopped over with Jean and their sons Byron and Josiah. Josiah was only 6 months old. I shared our dinner with them. I believe that there is always enough to share. Well, Jean invited us to dinner the next week. Did I mention that Jean is Filipino? Jeannie is the best cook ever. I absolutely loved her pancit, lumpia, and adobo. I had never tasted food so good. I was so excited the following week when she invited us to dinner again. I was pregnant, fat, and hungry all the time. I recall reaching her front door, but did not smell any food cooking like I did the last time I was there. I walked in and saw several ladies sitting on the couch with gifts in front of them. Then I saw a cake and chips. Jeannie then said, "Allie, this is for you. These are women from my church. We are giving you a baby shower." This act touched my heart tremendously. How did she get people that did not even know me to buy me and my baby gifts? I would not have had a baby shower if it were not for her. I loved Jeannie from that day on. I confessed years later that I was still disappointed that she didn't cook. She is one of the kindest and giving people that I know. I learned so much from Jeannie, her being a little older and already having 2 children. We lived on base housing together. She would come upstairs every day with the pan de sal, and I would make us coffee, and we would do my exercise video, Calinetics. The second happiest day of my life was when I gave birth to Joshua, and the third happiest day was when I gave birth to Christina. However, Christina's delivery was difficult. I was in labor for 12 hours with my son Joshua and vowed to never do that again. Then I thought Joshua would be lonely growing up without a playmate, and I had forgotten about the pain. So we got pregnant with Christina. I knew the moment that I conceived her. Joshua was 5 months old when Douglas came home on leave from Korea. He had mailed some wooden wood chimes to me, and I had hung them above the bed. I did not know what they were when I was 20. Well, when we were doing the horizontal mambo, the wind chimes began to move as if a huge wind blew. Douglas stopped for a minute because he was startling. I looked at the window and it was not even open. I knew that I was pregnant. I only waited 2 weeks to go to Wyman Park Hospital to get a pregnancy test. They said that you had to wait 4 weeks after a skip period before the test to be accurate. I lied and said it had been 4 weeks. It came back positive. I was overjoyed. I was in labor 22 and a half hours with Christina, and she kept turning sideways inside of me. I had to breathe through contractions while the doctors put his hands in order to turn her around. He removed his hands and she turned back around. The second time he did it, I felt life slipping away from me, and I yelled for my Savior at the top of my lungs, "Jesus!" A peace came over me immediately. The doctor said it was finally time to go into the delivery room. And that's the end of chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed it. Oh, that isn't the end. Dang. Say time to go to work. What time is it? 3. All right, it's 2 more pages. got to go to ballet. I think I got time. Time to go to work. Okay. Christina was 3 months old when funds became a little tight. Douglas and I decided that I would start working part-time after he got home from work. I started working part-time as a waitress at a Thai restaurant. I was still nursing her. Douglas wanted me to quit that job after the first day because Christina didn't want to drink the breast milk from a bottle. My mother named me Allison. It spells all is on. That had always been my motto. If there was a way to do something that I wanted to do, I would always find that way. I did not want to quit only after one day, so I explained the problem to the manager. I was such a good worker that she told me that I could bring Christina to work with me and put her in the far corner of the kitchen in a swing. I would take her into the bathroom to nurse her. No wonder she grew up loving to cook. The cooks adored her. One of them used to call her Meatball because her cheeks were so fat that it looked like she had meatballs in her cheeks. They worked me too hard there. I was not only the only waitress, but I had to bust my own tables and set my own tables up after that. I soon got a job as a waitress at the NCO club. By this time, Christina started to take the bottle for her father. Soon, I realized that my working part-time as a waitress and Douglas's income would not be enough to award my children the same lifestyle that I had growing up. I always heard people say that they wanted better for their children than what they had. I decided to go back to school so I could get a job that paid more. I had gone to private Catholic schools and we had a summer home. I could not provide that for my children on a part-time waitress salary. Thankfully, I left Hampton University in good standing and went to see about re-enrolling. It was too expensive. My mother offered to pay, but I told her that I was married now and that I was not her responsibility any longer. All is on. I applied for and received a Pell Grant and first attended Thomas Nelson Community College with a major in fine arts. There was enough money left over from tuition and buying books that I was able to buy Douglas a white guitar for his birthday. I was so excited. He absolutely loves the artist Prince and is a very gifted musician. He taught himself to play many instruments. I recall laying in the bed while I was pregnant with Joshua, listening to him create music. I was his #1 fan. When we would finish the song that he was working on, when he would finish the song he was working on, I would yell to him, "Go ahead, Doug. That sounded so good." My mother instilled the importance of education in me at an early age, and it was never an option not to go to college. I always worked hard to get good grades. College was no different. I'm an A student. I do what I must do to get what I want. I put in the study time. My gift was art, but I developed a passion for the Spanish language. Thomas Nelson had a professor named Gloria Smith, who I simply adored. She used to write comments on all my papers and tell me what a good student I was. I've always responded well to encouragement. I worked even harder for her. Then I took advantage of the opportunity to have a Spanish tutor. It was free for students. I wanted to practice conversational Spanish. My tutor's name was Marco Camion. He was from Lima, Peru. I would meet with Marco in the cafeteria and would even call him on the phone to practice speaking. I still remember how his mother answered the phone. "Allo?" She had the sweetest voice and loved to talk to me. Our free sessions came to an end one day when Mrs. Smith came to me and asked what I was doing. She told me that I was making straight A's and that she needed me to be a tutor. I did not realize that I was that good. I began tutoring and getting paid for it, and students' grades went up. After graduating with honors from Thomas Nelson, I transferred to Christopher Newport University, where I received a partial minority academic scholarship. I majored in fine art again, but had extra scholarship money, so I took extra courses in Spanish because I loved it so. I was happy in my marriage with Douglas for 8 years. We had our ups and downs, but we were basically happy. We loved our children and were responsible parents. We lived on Langley Air Force Base. It reminded me of Ocean Pines because it was right on the waterfront. I would take the kids to visit my family in Baltimore when I could, and my mother and sister Adrian would come and visit us often. Adrian didn't have any children, but she loved being Aunt Adrian. She loved to shower the kids with gifts. One of the best memories that I have of my mom was at Latin night at the NCO club. Every Friday, they would have a Latin night in the ballroom. They had a live salsa band. I would finish waitressing and sneak through the kitchen door and dance and practice my Spanish. I was never taught how to salsa, but I would follow well. I could follow well. My mother used to be a dancer with the Catherine Dunham dance group right out of high school. She traveled throughout Europe with the group. She was at that time an ordained minister. This night, I convinced my mother to join me for Latin night. I know that I got my gift of dance from her, and I knew that she would love it. Well, she went. The ballroom was packed with people. The orchestra was in rare form. My mother and I were both asked to dance right away. The dance floor stayed full all night. I did not see my mother again until they brought the lights up at 3 a.m. Me and my dance partner and my mother and her dance partner were the only four people still on the dance floor. Best memory ever. She was so happy, and so was I. She was imitating the men asking her, "Will you learn to salsa like that girl?" We were African American women of non-Hispanic origin, but we could dance the salsa and merengue so well. The end of my first marriage. First, Jean's husband Paul got stationed in Saudi Arabia during the Desert Storm War, and then Douglas got stationed there. I helped Jeannie during her meltdown when Paul was away, and she helped me during mine when Douglas was away. A combination of things changed in our marriage when Douglas got back from Saudi. He seemed different. I was different also. I was still in college, and I had become more independent. He was not my whole world anymore. This was something else that affected our relationship. It was a case of mistaken identity. One of Douglas's friends told him that they saw me going into a hotel room with this club manager who was Hispanic. Douglas had never had seen us speaking Spanish together before. It was not me though. It was someone who looked like me. I do know the person, and I know that they went to the hotel together because the person told me. Unfortunately, he did not ask me about this. I admit that I was behaving differently and wanted more freedom. I even lied to him once that I was over a girlfriend's house, that I was over a male friend's house. I got busted because he had called my friend's house and I was not there. Nothing sexual was going on. The classmate was just nice to me, and it seemed like Doug did not like me, and it seemed like Douglas did not like me anymore. I just wanted to be happy and feel good about myself for a while. I think because of that lie, he chose to believe what he heard about me. He began to treat me mean and even called me out of my name. He had never called me out of my name. Um, I did not understand why he was being so mean to me. Once, while we were arguing, I looked at my children and they were sitting on the floor crying and holding each other. It reminded me of me crying while my mother and stepfather were arguing. I decided that I was not going to subject my children to that. I ended up leaving with the children to live in a shelter. I just wanted peace. After living in the shelter for a year, I went back to him, and it was and that is when he told me that his friends saw me at the hotel. I told him it was not me, and I think he believed me, but he still seemed upset with me. The arguing began again, and I left again with the kids. The shelters in Hampton were not bad at all. They were clean, and because I followed the rules, the kids and I ended up with our own apartment. After Douglas and I separated in April of 93 and I graduated from college in May of 94, my mother asked me to come back home to Baltimore. I became a high school Spanish and art teacher. Our children grew up in Baltimore and attended private Catholic schools through ninth grade like I had done growing up. I only attended private Catholic schools until um, 7th grade because of financial hardship my mother was going through due to her separation from my stepfather. I was feeling like I was giving my children more than I had. I took them to church regularly. My mother was a great inspiration to me spiritually, and I tried to emulate for her love for the Lord and others. I was affectionate, giving my children plenty of hugs and smiles growing up like my mother gave me. That's the end of chapter 1. Woo! God bless y'all. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I guess I'm going to read chapter 2 tomorrow. I'm going to see what Lord lead me to do. But it was fun.